everyone and welcome back to my studio, the Pottery Corner down on the south coast of England near Chichester. Welcome back. We're doing another Glaze Kiln fire opening today. The kilns have been chundering away very nicely, thank you. And as you can see, there's yet another bisque load. So my students have been ramping out the work, so the kilns have been working overtime. So let's get on with it without further ado. The kiln is down to 41 degrees centigrade, so it's okay to open. Anything under 50 degrees centigrade on a glaze firing is fine. If you open it over the top of that temperature, you risk your glaze pinging when it comes out of the kiln, and that is never a good look. So it's down to 41. I'm going to flick the switch. Now, the sneakiest of very sneakies, as always, but I really did have about a 2-second peek earlier today, and I really didn't take in very much of what is on the top layer. And what is on the top layer, ta-da, is something that's been refired. So Janet's turtle bird bath, she decided that she would add a little bit more glaze and we would refire it. So to do that, to reglaze a piece that's already gone through a glaze firing, we simply spray it with hairspray so that the glaze has something to adhere to. Some people will warm their work and then put the glaze onto warm work to allow the glaze to dry, because of course it's no longer porous once it's been through a glaze firing. But we simply, in the studio, we simply just spray it with hairspray, let the hairspray dry and then go over it with your glaze. It takes ages for the glazes to dry, so if you're layering up glazes on something that has previously been glazed, it is quite a long process letting it dry in between coats. Okay, so all of that said, you'll have seen this bowl before, probably 4 or 5 videos ago. And actually this time round, I think it was definitely worth putting it back through another firing. So she's added to the original glazes. So the rim was originally glazed in Emerald Falls, Amaco's Emerald Falls, and she's added some textured turquoise. This whole thing now looks like it has a bit more movement. It was quite flat when it first came out of the kiln, and the water was just Amaco's Sky, and again it really didn't have much of a sort of a watery feel to it. So she's added some Amaco Seaweed over the top, and I think that the whole thing actually is much better than it was before. The only downside of refiring, which is quite an interesting downside, is that the June bug on the dragonfly here has gone a bit odd. So June bug has this sort of effervescence to it, and actually quite appropriate for a dragonfly, obviously, but it's kind of gone a bit matte. It actually looks like a sweet wrapper, which is quite interesting, but it doesn't detract from it, but it wasn't actually supposed to do that. So obviously refiring something with June bug on may not be such a good idea. But this is much better. This sort of watery feel inside is much better. So Janet, I think that was definitely a wise decision, and Janet's here tomorrow, so I'm sure she'll be pleased to see that that has made it out of the kiln safely. Next thing in here, as you know, I am a great advocate of test tiles. I do everything test tile before I put it on my work, because I don't want to spend hours and hours and hours making something and then completely ruin it by using a glaze that I don't know how it works in my kiln. So I do a lot of test tiles. And Janet has made a piece using a lot of underglazes upstairs, a big vase, and has spent a lot of time painting the different underglazes in different layers. So we've done a test tile with some of the studio underglazes with Maco's sea salt over the top, just to see what it would do. And I wasn't sure that the underglazes would show, but actually they do. So that's quite an interesting test tile. So I'm sure Janet will be pleased to see that tomorrow, because it just gives us an idea of where to take the piece that she's working on currently. So I know she's waited a couple of weeks for the test tile to come through the kiln, but definitely worth doing if you've spent a long time hand building or making something. You don't want to spoil it by putting a glaze on that you don't know. Right, so I'm going to take this shelf out carefully, pop it over onto Midge. Right, let's see what we've got in here. Okay, props out, props, ding ding. There we go. Right, start with mine, which is that's quite an interesting thing. So on the back is Emerald Falls, Amaco's Emerald Falls. This is just a little thrown bowl of particularly no consequence, but I used some Ellen transfer on it, as you can see, with a turtle and some coral and a fish. And then I glazed it using Amaco's Meadow, which has glass in it. And I obviously put far too much on because the glaze in the glass has actually pooled in the bottom of this dish. And as it's pulled the transfer with it. As you can see, the transfer outline is now smudged. I don't dislike it. I like the Emerald Falls on the back. This is rather nice, isn't it? Quite like that, really pretty. But yes, too much glaze pulled in the bottom. Not very successful. I think that probably is the only piece of mine that's in the kiln as well. So, but that's fine. Next out is a cat bowl made by one of my new students, Carrie, and her cat's called Bob. So it's got his name on here with some hearts. And that has been glazed in, she says, can't remember, that is snow on the front. And then it looks to me like that's got some Emerald Falls in it, but it's also got some blue on the rim. So that, I'm not sure what that blue is on the rim. I think if I remember correctly, that it's Adventurine on the rim, and then the outside here is Emerald Falls and the inside is snow. And what's interesting is where the Adventurine has gone on, it's actually gone blue, which it wasn't supposed to. But it's quite nice nonetheless. So that is Bob's new dish. I hope Carrie is pleased with that. That's her first dish through the kiln. And indeed this is Carrie's too. So this is a plate that Carrie's made. Now on the outside we have Amaco's Deep Firebrick, which is this red. On the inside is Amaco's Weeping Plum. And you know what I'm going to say next, don't you? Not enough glaze. Patchy, quite patchy. So that is probably, Carrie has just made the glaze travel too far. So although she's put 3 coats on it, she hasn't used enough glaze. She's emulsioning a wall rather than laying glaze on. So a bit patchy. It doesn't actually detract from the dish. It does make it look quite rustic, but from a technical point of view, that definitely needed at least one more coat. And again, she's used the Adventurine round the rim, and this has been much more successful on this one. Rather nice. Quite like that. Yeah, pretty good actually. So that's okay. Safely through. I'll just take the bits and bobs that's standing on out of the kiln. And take the next shelf out. Okay, so let's see what we've got. Again, let's get the props out. We know what they do. Not being quite so nice to them now, Barbara, in Edinburgh. Hello. Let's get those out. Okay, and these are another fairly new student, Jill. This is Jill's. I'll have to knock off the cookie. You know that I use cookies in my kiln. I'll have to just give that a knock with a hammer because it's just got stuck on there. Oh, actually, I've managed to get it off. So that is why I stand things on cookies, because I'd rather that the glaze was on the cookie and not on the kiln shelf. So this is a seed pod made by Jill. Actually a really lovely form and a very nice top. And that is glazed in Amaco's Light Sepia, which is this sort of taupe colour. She did put some ancient copper just on the top for a little bit of detail, but I have to say it wasn't very thick and it's got a little bit lost. It is a slightly different colour to the remainder of the body, but if she had wanted that to really show, it probably needed to be thicker, but a nice form and a nice shape, so that will look nice. She's going to put it onto canes in the garden. You'll have seen them before coming out of the kiln. This is the second of Jill's. That one is just a straightforward seed pod with fins and the glaze on there. Now, this is interesting. This glaze on here is cherry blossom, Amaco's cherry blossom, which should of course be pink. So Amaco's cherry blossom should be this colour, right? But in my kiln, cherry blossom comes out like this, which is frankly just off of mixing clear, and weeping plum comes out like this, which should be cherry blossom. So it just goes to show you how different the glazes can come out in different kilns. So that is just cherry blossom, which is just off transparent. It's got a slight tinge to it, but hardly anything. It's almost transparent. And the third one of Jill's is this one. Now this one is interesting. So this has got ancient copper, a lovely shape. She spent quite some time getting these grooves and what have you, and it really is very lovely. And that is Amaco's ancient copper. And as you can see, I hope you can see in the camera, in the light, that it actually has this beautiful copper patina on it on each side. That is a lovely, lovely head. I hope you can pick that up on the camera in the light. So yes, that's a goodie. She'll love that. Very, very nice. Lovely form, lovely glaze, lovely execution. Well done, Jill. Next we have a rather lovely berry bowl. So this is a berry bowl made by Kathy. This is hand built over one of the studio moulds. So we have bisque moulds and plaster moulds upstairs that the girls use for bowls. And this has been glazed. So it's got 4 little feet. As you can see, there's a little shard on there. So I'm just going to watch my fingers. This is deep fire brick on the back and then deep fire brick on the front with blue rutile over. And look at the lovely surface with the holes. I think that's been really successful. Lovely colour. Really nice. I think that's really pretty. So that is Amaco's deep fire brick on the back and on the front. And on the front it's got blue rutile over the top. And on the edge, on this rim, again, I hope you can see this reaction of the blue rutile with the deep fire bricks. Rather nice, isn't it? Lovely. And we have a test tile upstairs of this. I think that's been really successful. That's a lovely piece. Very pretty. Lovely, lovely. And a nice size and a nice thing to put your berries in the summer. Very nice. This again is Kathy's. Be careful of the cookie. Again, another seed pod pot. This is hand built by pinching. Rather nice. And the glaze on here is Amaco's Iron Yellow, which is this sort of oatmeal-y, vanilla-y colour. Rather nice, actually. Yeah, very nice. And then on the top is Ancient Jasper. So the Jasper has mingled rather nicely on the rim to give it the interest. So again, that's rather nice. Quite like that. This bit particularly here is really very pretty. If you can see the dripping there. It's actually got sort of slight blues and heather colours in it. It's really quite pretty. So a nice little pot, nice little sculptural pot. I mean, you could put it out in the garden, you could put it on a table with a candle in it, whatever. Now, the last 2 things in the kiln are hydrangea heads. Because the hydrangea heads have glass in the top, I make these large cookies to sit them on. Because obviously, because the temperature in the kiln is going much higher than it would normally go for firing glass in the kiln, I make these large dishes for the hydrangea heads to stand on. Right, so this one is Louise's, very nice. Really very pretty, lovely Hydrangea Head. Really lovely green on there, lovely. Very successful, I would say, rather lovely. So that is Louise's, that's made with porcelain, and then it has Amaco's mixing clear, and then she's added a little bit, tiny bit of pear just on the edges here to give it a bit more colour on the edges where the glass isn't going to reach. And then we've used bullseye frit on the top to make the green colour. Very nice, lovely. That's a lovely head. I'll pop that at the back. Next is, I think this is Louise's as well. And that's interesting because this one, as I was saying about the glass, I should say that probably nearly all the glass on this head is now on the cookie because the Hydrangea Head is not straight. So when it went into the kiln, it actually wasn't straight, and you can probably see there's a prop in there. Let me just get rid of that. You can probably see that it is actually fused to the cookie. I mean, it will take nothing more than the hammer to just knock it off, but obviously all the glass has kind of just melted off of there onto that cookie, and that is why I use these cookies, these big cookies underneath the Hydrangea Heads, because that is what they do when they tip and then the glass comes off. But this one has been done with mulberry. Rather nice. Yeah, again, a lovely head. It won't take more than me tapping that to get that off, so it shouldn't damage the head in any way, but that is why I use the cookies. Right, so that's your lot in the kiln today. Short but sweet. A couple of shout outs, messages that I've received this week. This one is from Annalie Stridham, who lives in Kinghorn in the UK. She recently bought the Wonky Pot template, and again the Wonky Pot template is available via the Etsy shop, and the link to the Etsy shop's in the description below. I recently purchased your Wonky Pot template, and I'm going to try mono printing. Yes, so do have a look at the mono printing playlist and join me for full tutorial on how to do mono printing. Just a quick question regarding making your own decorating slip. Can I use a casting slip, so a ready-made casting slip with my coloured pigment instead of using my glue slip? So we were talking in the mono printing about using your clay body basically made into a slurry, put through a sieve, and then you add your coloured pigments to make your own coloured slip. So Annalie is asking, can she use a casting slip to put her pigments into? Because obviously the process of making it into a slurry and sieving it has already been done because it's a casting slip. Now, the answer to that question is, I'm not sure about that. I would definitely test it, the casting slip, on my clay body, because of course the problem with using a different type of slip to the clay body that you may be making the slab out of for mono printing is that they might shrink at different rates. There may be more shrinkage in the casting slip and less shrinkage in your slab, and what will happen if you use it is that it will just peel off in the firing. So I think it's an interesting question, and one that I might actually use some casting slip on my clay body and see what happens. But I have done it before where I've used a red earthenware body and made my own porcelain slip, coloured slip, and that did not work at all because the red stoneware clay shrunk much, the porcelain slip shrunk much more than the red stoneware body, and I was left basically with very thin shards of porcelain slip on the top. So don't know that that will work, Annalie, but I might do a test on that. But if you happen to do it, can you come back to me with another message and let me know? Right, next one, last one, is from Shelley Jackson. Shelley, I don't know where you are because I can't work it out from this message, but she's asked a question about glass, when we were talking earlier about one of the glazes that has glass in it, and obviously the glass on the Hydrangea Heads. So she said she's made some soya sauce bowls with bullseye fine glass frit on my inspiration, because she's never used glass before, and then she realised that they may not be food safe. They turned out so beautifully, and she's attached a picture. So this is the picture of Shelley's soya sauce bowls. They are beautiful. They're really lovely, aren't they? Beautiful colours, lovely use of glass, really, really nice. So the second part of the message is, please let me know if they're okay for soya sauce or in fact not suitable for any food use. I called Creative Glass and they said no manufacturer will guarantee food safety. So on that subject, no is the simple, very simple answer to that question. If you use glass inside a functional form, it will not be food safe, because the glass will eventually craze, because the coefficient of the clay body structure and the coefficient of the glass is different. You'll find that over time the glass will craze, and when it does that, what will happen is that your soy sauce or whatever you're going to use in your bowls will seep into the crazing, and then of course you've got a problem because you can't get it out, and therefore when you put something else in it, it's going to have bacteria and nasty things in it. So if you do put glass into things, it really is only for decorative use. And the other reason that I'm saying no is that over time again the glass will start to break up, and if you get a piece of glass in something that you're eating out of a bowl that's got glass in the bottom, you're going to find yourself in all sorts of trouble if you're ingesting that. Not a good idea. So I'm going to say, Shelley, as I answered on the email, no, sorry. Beautiful, beautiful bowls. I would suggest that you use them just decoratively and don't actually eat any liquids or any food out of those. But very, very lovely bowls nonetheless. And there was a comment on her email that says, I wrote to you on YouTube to say how grateful I am for your tutorials and have defected from being a Jessica Putnam Phillips groupie to a Sarah Amos groupie. How about that? How about that? Hey? So Jessica Putnam Phillips, if you're watching this, and I don't suppose by any stretch of the imagination you even have time to watch anybody else's pottery videos, but come on girl, I'm out to get you. I'm out to get you. Let's have some followers like Jessica Putnam Phillips has. God, blimey, can you imagine? And that big company that she now owns, all from her YouTube videos in her shed about 8 years ago. So hey, you never know your luck, do you? So thank you, Shelley, for your question. Thank you for your lovely message. I am going to do one more thing this week, which actually I haven't done for a few kiln openings, which is Student of the Week. Now Janet has made this lovely big bird bath, which is very beautiful and did take a long time. But for me this week, there's two things which it's really hard to choose between, but I just love the form and the execution of this berry bowl made by Kathy. I mean, it really is. It is beautiful in its simplicity. Well executed, well made, well finished, well glazed. Well done, Kathy. Student of the Week this week. Ta-da! Right, so that's your lot. As you can see, we'll be back in a couple of weeks' time with all of this lot that will have been processed by then. In the meantime, thank you as always for watching. Drop me a comment, let me know what you're doing. Send me a photo via the website if you're trying out my tutorials. And as I say, yeah, there's about 70 plus videos on my the Pottery Corner channel now, so I mean there's plenty of back catalogue to look at if you're new here, if you find yourself new here. So thanks for watching, take care of yourselves, I'll see you all on the next one, bye for now.